know, sometimes we miss Randy when he's not here, but he has let me know a lot of Sundays he's not here. He's in one or two other churches he goes to.
Yes, sir. I visit the church in Bunkie, or one church in Bunkie, Assembly of God, I believe it is. It's on about the Hayes Bush, right on that side of Bunkie, in other words.
Then you come here every once in a while to get straightened out. Psalm 149, verse 4. For the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. He will beautify the meek with salvation. Now, a couple other versions. NIV says, one of them says that he will crown the humble with salvation. And another says, and I like it, I guess the best, he will beautify the humble with salvation. What makes you beautiful? My goodness. Men do it as much as women. Don't think they don't. I know that they do because I know one that does. We spend as much time in front of the mirror Sunday morning trying to make ourselves look beautiful. Yes, we do. Well, handsome or beautiful. But what makes a person beautiful? Your salvation. You can't have that without humility. I went to visit Nettie Schenberg yesterday for a few moments. Good friend of mine. Extremely faithful in the Catholic Church, in music, in leadership, all through the years. Just a really nice person. Lives right here in Evergreen. You know her. And I don't know how the conversation came about. I was looking at some really beautiful pictures that were on her wall. And somehow she brought up Michelangelo. Michelangelo, who was a true artist centuries ago. And she said, you know, Michelangelo said he could look at a block of stone, ugly, raw, rough stone, and he could see something in his mind in that stone. He saw something in that stone nobody else ever saw. And he would take his hammer and his chisel. He was a sculptor. Take his hammer and his chisel, and he said, I set at liberty what was in that stone when I created a beautiful, beautiful statue. The sculpture can see a potential beauty within a block of stone before he ever strikes it with his hammer and chisel. God will beautify the humble with salvation. He sees you. He sees me. Just a raw block of ugly, rough stone. But he can see what's in you. What can be within you. The potential that is in you. And through his action, he can make you beautiful. Indeed. Amen. Genesis chapter 1, way back. God creates the universe. And over and over and over, he says something in Genesis chapter 1. He makes light, divides it from darkness. Verse 4, he says, and it was good. Verse 10, he makes the seas and the dry land and saw that it was good. Verse 12, he brings forth the vegetation on the earth. And God saw that it was good. Verse 18, he made the difference between the day and the night, the sun and the moon. And God saw that it was good. Verse 21, he makes the aquatic life in the seas and the rivers and the oceans. And God saw that it was, say it, good. Verse 25, he makes the animal beasts of the field, the animal life on this planet. And God saw what? That it was good. And then he makes mankind. Male and female, he makes them. Genesis chapter 1. And then the most astounding verse is the end of chapter 1. Chapter 31. God saw everything that he had made. And behold, it was very good. We were made to be good. We were made to be perfect. We were made in the image of God. We were made to be able to reflect and to radiate and to exemplify the personhood of God himself in our lives. That's what God made when he made you, when he made me. And it was very good. But oh, then what happens in Genesis again, chapter 6. God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth. And every imagination and the thoughts of his heart were evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth. It grieved him and his heart. He changed his mind. If God's allowed to wish, he wished he had never made mankind. Because of what we have done with creation, what we do to one another, the meanness, the ugliness, the awfulness, the inhumanity of humanity. That's not the way God made us. That is what we become. And every baby that is born today is born perfect and sinless and beautiful. But that one will grow to the point where that one will, like you did and I did, rebel against God and become something that brings grief to the heart of God. All you have to do is pick up the newspaper, turn on the TV, turn on the news. Ugliness everywhere. My goodness. We talk about what's going on in, say, the Middle East and even here, about beheading people. What could be uglier than off his head? You think that's horrible, that's terrible. Whoa, wait a minute. Go way back. What did Catholics and Protestants do to each other in England? Cut their heads off. What did they do in the 1700s in France? They invented a device called a guillotine that cut their heads off. Very often over religion. In our own colonial America. I told you something that, can you believe after 30, how many years? 39 years? Is it something close to that? I better be right. After all these years of marriage, I showed her something that you will never see. She didn't even know I had a tiny, tiny little tiny spot on me. She said, that's an old mole. That's not a mole. It was a birthmark. You may have a birthmark somewhere on your body. I don't know. You know what they did in colonial America? If you had a birthmark, you were a witch. You were a devil. And they'd drown you, or they'd stone you, or they would hang you, or burn you alive at a stake. Humanity everywhere. The American Civil War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Vietnam. Today, humanity grieves the heart of God, and you know and I know sometimes we become that ugly inside. We may not cut off heads, but we sure can be mean to one another. Sometimes within our own family. God had a purpose for you and for me, and He takes pleasure. His love is making us what He wants us to be. You've heard this so many times, so many times. Ephesians 2:8, we hear it over and over. For grace are you saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man boast. And that's where we stop. You're saved by grace through faith. And that's where we stop. Seldom do we read the next phrase in the next verse, and it is so important. For we are His workmanship. It's in the King James. It's also in other versions. You are the result of God's working in your life. You are God's workmanship. Now, I'm going to give you the Greek lesson and get fancy with you, but I will tell you the Greek word there means you are God's poetry. That's what workmanship is in the Greek. You are God's poem. You are God's poetry, His work of art. God will make you what you ought to be when He works within your life. And His pleasure, His joy is out of love to make you what you ought to be. How does He do that? Well, I hope you're paying attention to what paragraph is in bulletin page 2. I emailed that to Betty Johnson in Cleveland, Ohio, for Philip because of what they're going through. I emailed that to my friend in New Jersey, a lady that I've never met in person, but I've been a friend of hers on the internet for, I guess, nearly 25 years now. She has a horrible life. She has an unbelieving husband. The only job she ever had was a barmaid serving drinks in a bar. And she quit that. Married a very abusive man, a man who did not understand anything about the Lord when she came to know the Lord. She's had a lot of heartaches. Lives in extreme poverty. Has a hard life. Email that to her. About a half a dozen other people last night I emailed it to. Because what it is saying is God uses your hurts. He uses your pain. He uses your difficulties. He uses the awful things that can happen to you to chip away at the broad old rock and make you the beautiful person you can be. It's so beautiful. Our cherished plans have failed, disappointments have prevailed. We've wandered in the darkness, heavy-hearted and alone, but we're trusting in the Lord, and according to His Word, we will understand it by and by. You will look back at your life, and all those hurts and disappointments and letdowns, difficulties, pains and sicknesses and death that took place all around you, all of that, God uses them to make you into the person that will reflect the image of God Himself. God uses all of your experiences to make you more and more like Christ, who has suffered everything you suffer. There's no disappointment you have that He has not had. There is no difficulty that you have that He has not faced. There is no grief and sorrow that you have ever had that Christ did not first experience it. And He actually gave Himself on that bloody cross to give you what God wants you to be, a beautiful person in Him. And so I close with John, the 3rd chapter of the 1st letter. 1 John 3. Beloved, now we are the sons of God. We're the children of God. This is written to you, the believer. And it doth not yet appear what we shall be. What are you going to look like in heaven? How will you appear after you die on this earth? What will be your future? What will you look like then? It does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know, not think, not maybe, not so, but we know that when He, Jesus, shall appear, we shall be like Him. We shall see Him as He is. And every man, every person that hath this hope in Him purifieth himself, even as He is pure. Whatever you're going through today, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, in your life, in your marriage, in your workplace, in your church life, in your school, in your social life, whatever you're going through, God will use it if you just open yourself up to Him and say, here am I. I come now. I give myself to you. Here I am. Chip away. Chip away. Chip away. At first, with chisel coarse and stroke unspared, the corners off He broke. Soon the form appeared. But then with finer tools He wrought, and finer yet, until He brought the perfect image of His Son. So God divinely works with love. He in eternal ages chose to show His works of grace, and thus with blow on blow to trace the image of His Son. And when we have glory gained, and Christ's full image have attained, we'll praise His wondrous skill and bless the hand that dealt each blow upon the marble here below in working His will. He wants to work in your life, on your life, through your life. He will make you into a beautiful, beautiful image of Christ. You don't understand it now, but you'll understand it by and by.